everyone, we're live. My name is Karlyn Borysenko. Welcome to the Decode the Left live stream slash podcast. I'm doing these live streams over on my Substack. That is Karlyn, Karlyn.substack.com. Make sure you download the Substack app, get notified when I go live. I do not have a set schedule for these live streams, so it is whenever the urge strikes me to do a live stream. And then they will get uploaded to the Substack. They will get uploaded to the Decode the Left podcast, where you can subscribe on Substack, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that usual stuff. And there's just no other topic to talk about today other than we are in Pride Month. It's June. Can you believe this? It is June. First of all, can we just say where the holy hell did the first half of the year go? I feel like I feel like yesterday was January and now all of a sudden we're in June, which is crazy in and of itself. But more importantly, for our purposes, this is Pride Month. Pride Month, Pride Month, Pride Month. I wish there was alcohol in this. Sadly, there's only coffee, so hang on. We have entered into the most glorious virtue signaling month of the year for the Democrats, the liberals, and the progressives, and that is Pride Month, where you will be able to go into any store or to any football or baseball game, apparently, because the MLB, and even saw the New England Patriots had a giant progress flag at Gillette Stadium. Can you believe that? Really? Football? Okay. You're going to be able to go into almost any store, get some rainbow colored clothes, all that stuff. There's going to be parades of all sorts of people doing all sorts of inappropriate things. But for my money, what I'm most interested in is how is queer Marxism going to rear its ugly head during Pride Month? You know, queer Marxism is a topic that I cover quite a bit. Queer Marxism is one of my absolute favorite and yet terrifying fascinations of the far left, because queer Marxism is the most dystopian ideology on the far left, and it's not even close. Queer Marxism includes gender ideology. Queer Marxism includes disability theory. Queer Marxism includes fat studies. Queer Marxism is an extremely radicalized far left political ideology. Drag Queen Story Hour comes out of queer Marxism. Abolish the Family comes out of queer Marxism. All of the most dystopian ideas on the left have one home, and that is queer ideology. And I cover queer Marxism more than anyone else on the internet. I devote an extremely large amount of time to this stuff. I'm actually working on 2 books about it right now. Oh, by the way, hey, a new book just dropped today. I wrote about it on the Substack. I wrote about it on the Red Menace Collective. You can find it on my Twitter, which is Dr. Karlyn B. Alice in Queerland. So I totally forgot to mention this earlier. A couple months back, I wrote a short story based on Alice in Wonderland called Alice in Queerland, where Alice asks, "What is a woman?" in her middle school classroom, and she gets in all sorts of trouble for that. And then she goes down the DEI gender ideology rabbit hole to an insane world based on Alice in Wonderland, where you see all the Alice in Wonderland characters, but they're all a little bit queer. It does get a little bit dark in places. I released this a couple months ago as a short story, and then I decided to update and revise and expand it and actually release it as a book. And so it's out today. It's out today on Amazon. You can find it in paperback and in Kindle. You can also, if you remember the Red Menace Collective, which the Red Menace Collective is like my VIP group that gets access to all my book drafts before I actually write the book or publish the book. You can download a complimentary PDF on redmenacecollective.substack.com if you're a member over there, or you can pick it up on Amazon in paperback, Kindle, whatever works for you. I had a ton of fun writing Alice in Queerland. I had even more fun revising Alice in Queerland. There are so many, okay, not to pat myself on the back too much, but there are so many one-liners in that book that just made me laugh writing them. Like, sometimes uncontrollably, like, sometimes I was like, "Oh, this is so on the nose, it's not even funny." So I had a great time writing it. I hope you guys have a great time reading it. Pick it up today. If you pick it up and you read it, leave a review on Amazon, all that good stuff. You can also find all my other books. You can find a full list of my books at redmenacepress.com. There's a bunch that I've written. This is my 4th book of the year. Anyway, so pick up Alice in Queerland if you want to celebrate Pride Month, I think, right? But to that point, I'm actually working on 2 other books about queer Marxism right now. So queer Marxism is a subject that I have my head in all the time. I have a really large archive of queer Marxist zines. We cover queer Marxist presentations and literature. We're going to be doing a lot of live streaming about it. I wanted to just do a quick stream to make sure that people understand exactly what we're talking about. On the right, you see a lot of people talking about we need to separate the T from the LGB. No, that's not what you need to do. It's not what you need to do. Now listen, I mean, if you want to be technical about it, is being trans the same thing as being gay, lesbian, or bisexual? No, I guess if you want to be technical about it, you could say, make a big deal out of that. But honestly, that whole conversation is a distraction. Trans is not actually the problem. Queer is the problem. So if you want to distract yourself by talking about we need to separate the T from the LGB, I mean, I guess go ahead, but you're missing the forest through the trees here. You're missing that there is a much bigger problem out there, a much bigger dystopian monster called queer Marxism that is the thing that corrupted trans in the first place. It's the thing that corrupted the LGB in the first place, okay? So here is the difference between trans and queer. And you need to understand what queer ideology is to really understand this difference. Queer is not about being gay. Queer is not about being trans. Queer is a far, far, far left dystopian radicalized political ideology that exists in underground subcultures, or that started in underground subcultures and now exists in our public schools. The goal of queer is to annihilate capitalism, because that's always what the left wants to do. But how are they going to annihilate capitalism? By abolishing the gender binary, abolishing the idea that men and women are a thing. When I say the gender binary, I mean men and women. They also want to abolish the nuclear family because they believe it's the reproduction mechanism of capitalism. Let's just talk about those 2 things real quick, and then we'll circle back to how trans is different than queer so that we can understand what we're going to be talking about this month. When I say the gender binary, I mean the categorizations of men and women. Okay, so what the left believes, what queer Marxists believe, is that capitalism, which they define as private property ownership, created the social construct of gender. That means the categories of man and the categories of woman. They believe that these are made up categories that have no biological basis. And if you say to them, don't you understand? That's not how biology works. They don't care, okay? They don't care. They don't care what a woman is. They don't care about any of these things. They believe these are made up categories that were created by capitalism. When capitalism created these made up categories, it created a hierarchy. The left always wants to abolish all hierarchies. The hierarchy is men at the top, women as the oppressed, right? That's what the patriarchy is. Anytime they're talking about the patriarchy, they are referring to the gender hierarchy in which men, the socially constructed category of men, is on top. Then women, the socially constructed category of women, is on the bottom. Men are oppressing women, men have all the power, yada, 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 yada. We've heard it a million times. What is the queer solution to this hierarchy in which one group is on the top of another group? Well, it's to get rid of the categories. Because if you get rid of the categories, you no longer have a hierarchy. So they want to abolish entirely the categories of men and women. They really do want to do this. They talk about it in their writings all the time. Come to Counter Revolutionary Book Club. We will show you. It is explicit. This is not even encoded language, guys. They very literally call to abolish the gender binary like all the time. When they're using the title of non-binary, they, them, zim, zer, z, zer, fey, fair, whatever the fuck. When they're using the title of non-binary, what they are saying is no binary, no men, no women. Having this third category of non-binary, which eventually they want to abolish that too, but it's a transitionary mechanism. Having this third category of non-binary gives people a way to opt out of the categories of men and women. When they're putting drag queen story hour in schools, a lot of people on the right think this is about sexualizing children. It's not at all. Now, I'm not arguing that sexualization of children doesn't happen. I'm not arguing that people shouldn't watch out for that. Of course you should. Of course you should. It is a problem. It's just not this problem, okay? And when we focus on the sexualization piece, and again, I'm not saying that people shouldn't be aware of it, they shouldn't be diligent, they shouldn't keep an eye out for this stuff. I'm not arguing that at all. But what I'm saying is that when we talk about Drag Queen Story Hour being about sexualizing or grooming kids, you actually miss the bigger picture, because that clears out every other conversation from the room. What Drag Queen Story Hour is actually about is teaching your kids that gender is non-binary, gender is fluid, gender is a spectrum, gender is a performance, literally a performance in this in the case of drag queens. You can change your gender as easily as changing an outfit. And oh, look, there's this sparkle cartoon-like character. Doesn't this look more fun? Doesn't wearing sparkles and dresses and frilly things when you're a little kid, doesn't that look more fun? Well, guess what? You can change your gender as easily as putting on a sparkly dress, or a pair of, pants, and drawing a mustache on your face, or whatever it happens to be. That's what they're teaching kids with Drag Queen Story Hour. They're teaching kids that gender is not real, that gender is a spectrum, that gender is fluid, that gender can change, that non-binary is a thing. This is the most dangerous part of gender ideology that people are not aware of. They're teaching this to your kids when they're 5 years old. And so any teaching around gender not being a rigid concept in which there are two and only two, and I really do appreciate Donald Trump writing one of those executive orders where he said, you can't teach this stuff in schools anymore. But you got to understand, you got to really be on the watch for this. Anytime any teacher is teaching about non-binary, they're teaching queer Marxism. Anytime your teachers are teaching that gender is fluid, they are teaching queer Marxism. Okay. So what is the difference between trans and queer then? Because isn't trans about changing your gender? Well, not exactly. Most trans people believe that the word trans is short for transition. Transition from man to woman or woman to man. That's what most trans people are doing. Now, we can have a conversation about whether or not gender dysphoria is a mental illness. I personally think that it is. That's a sad thing, by the way. We shouldn't be making fun of people for having mental illnesses, is my personal opinion. So when I'm saying it's a mental illness, I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. I know trans people that will acknowledge, yeah, this is just a mental illness and this is how I choose to treat it, and I'm more comfortable like this. More power to them, man. More power to them. They're not our enemy. A lot of trans people do not like this queer nonsense, okay? So if you were just a normal, and by the way, we can also talk about, some people push this idea that all trans women are autogynephiliacs. I mean, I suppose there's a case to be made there. I'm not going to get into that argument. The only thing I care about is that trans people who believe that trans means transition uphold the gender binary. Because trans people who want to transition from man to woman or woman to man, they still believe that man and woman are a thing. They're just saying, I'm going to go live socially as this one because it makes me more comfortable. Whatever, you're an adult. I don't really care what you do as an adult. As long as you believe that men and women are a real, actual thing, and you say, yeah, these are categories that are real, and I'm just identifying as one over the other, you are not queer. You also don't need to be gay to be queer, by the way. There are plenty of straight people that identify as queer. All you really need to do to be queer is identify as non-binary, which means you reject the categories of men and women. That's all it means. So we now know that trans people who just want to go from man to woman or woman to man, we know that they're not queer. So why then do you hear so many queer activists saying, I am trans and non-binary. My pronouns are he and they, or she and they, or things like that? Well, this is another game they play with language. Because they say, and they literally do say this, if you don't believe me, I will give you things to Google and you can look up separately from my websites. I've also documented this heavily on my Substack. Again, that's Karlyn, Karlyn.substack.com. When queer activists say the term trans, they don't mean transition. They mean transform or transcend. One of the last undercover things I did it last year, is I went to this conference called the Transforming Gender Conference at the University of California, Boulder. And you can find it on the website. They were literally arguing that multiple personality disorder was a gender identity. It was a crazy conference. But you can hear it in the title of the conference, Transforming Gender. transcending gender. Just Google transform gender, transcend gender, and see how many results come up. Well, Karlyn, why does it matter? It matters a lot, actually. It matters a lot. Because if you believe that trans means transition, you are still upholding the categories of men and women. If you believe that trans means transform or transcend, you are now going beyond the categories of men and women. They're saying to transform the binary, to transcend the binary. One of these groups, normal trans people that just want to go from man to woman or woman to man, they believe in upholding the gender binary. Queer activists do not believe in upholding the gender binary. That is how you tell the difference between the two. If you have a gay man or a gay woman or a bisexual man or a bisexual woman, and they believe that men and women are a thing, they are not queer. They're not queer at all. Queer Marxists are explicit about this. Their goal is to abolish capitalism by abolishing the gender binary and the nuclear family. Let's go to the nuclear family for a second. So why do they want to abolish the nuclear family? Well, anytime you hear talk about queering the nuclear family or families of choice, families of choice gets used in other contexts too, but a lot of queer Marxists use the idea of families of choice. I don't know why my camera's not focusing. There it goes. Might be better out of focus. I don't know. So the reason they want to abolish the nuclear family is they believe that the nuclear family is the social reproduction mechanism of capitalism. They believe it's two parents coming together in a monogamous relationship, and those parents could be man and woman, they could be man and man, they could be woman and woman. If two people are coming together in a monogamous relationship, queer Marxists believe that is a form of property relations that is granted by the capitalist state. So queer Marxists are not in favor of monogamous two-person marriage at all. No, they don't like gay marriage either. When two gay people get married and just want to settle down and have kids and buy a house and all that stuff, queer Marxists call that homonormative. They believe that the gays are assimilating to the straights. Queer is an anti-assimilationist ideology. Therefore, they're not going to get married. They're not going to raise their kids in a nuclear family because they believe if you raise your kids in a nuclear family, they are going to be raised with capitalist values. And yes, they do have kids, by the way. They absolutely have kids. They're not aborting all their babies, although the reason they support reproductive justice or abortion on demand and all that stuff is they do believe that abortion frees women from the gender binary. So it's another way in which they're attacking gender. They're also attacking the nuclear family. But that's not to say that all of them abort their kids. They provably just don't. A lot of them do have kids, actually, which is terrifying, but it is what it is. But they're not going to raise those kids in a nuclear family. A lot of the talk you see about polyamory nowadays. Now, polyamory is being in a relationship with more than one person at the same time. Not all queer people, excuse me, not all polyamorous people are queer. I know polyamorous people in real life that are not queer at all. This is just what they want to do. I don't really care. It's none of my fucking business. None of my business. Sorry if you don't like language, but sometimes I swear. It's none of my business. Not all polyamorous people are queer, but an awful lot of queer people are polyamorous. Because queer people use sex as a political statement. They are very literally trying to queer, to denormative what it means to be in a relationship by having a relationship with more than one person. There are polyamorous queer communes where there are multiple children by multiple different mothers and everyone's raising the kids like everyone is the parent of the kids and all this stuff. That is their effort to queer the nuclear family, to decolonize the nuclear family, to break out of social reproduction theory that is reproducing capitalism by reproducing capitalist values by raising kids in a nuclear family. If you have questions about any of this, please leave them in the comments. By the way, this might be a little confusing for people who are newer to my work. If you are newer to my work, welcome. But if you're confused, please ask a question. You can ask it in the chat if you're watching live. You can leave it in the comments later if you'd prefer to do that. I will answer all questions. I do pay attention to everything that gets posted on the Substack. So, Queer Marxists want to abolish the gender binary because they believe gender is a social construct created by capitalism. Queer Marxists want to abolish the nuclear family because they believe it's the reproduction mechanism of capitalism. They want to destroy normative society. Sometimes they call that heteronormativity. Sometimes they call that cis heteronormativity. It basically all means the same thing, which is norms that uphold capitalist society. That is what they're pushing back on when they're pushing back on normativity. Queer has nothing to do with sexualizing kids. Sexualizing kids is a different problem. It is a problem, but it's a different problem. And you have to treat it as a different problem. Because queer is literally trying to teach your kids in school that gender doesn't exist. Gender is a spectrum. You can change your gender as easily as changing your outfit. Queer is trying to teach your kids in schools, oftentimes in comprehensive sex education, about having non-traditional relationships and stuff like that. And even just teaching kids what this stuff is, you're still trying to push them towards that particular lifestyle. And queer is a lifestyle, by the way. Queer is not just something you identify as. Queer, for queer activists, is a lifestyle that they build their entire identity around this lifestyle. So there is a lot to dig into this month for Queer Marxism Month. I'll be doing live streams very regularly where we're going to be talking about different aspects of it. Make sure you subscribe to the Substack, stuff like that. Last thing I want to say, though, queer activists hate pride events. So we have kind of an interesting thing going on. And if you've been following along with the live streams and the podcast, you've probably already heard me talk about this recently. But for people who are new, we have to teach everyone, right? Queer is an anti-assimilationist ideology. Queer activists have a long history of attacking pride events. They just do. This goes back to the Bashback movement and the Mary Nardini gang back in 2008, 2009, 2010, around that time. They were literally attacking pride events. They were literally violently protesting pride events. Now, we haven't really seen queer activism in this country in the last couple of years. It got very, very quiet after October 7th. But guess what? It's come back with a vengeance. I covered last week that the Bashback movement, which is the militant, queer, violent arm of this movement, they are extremely dangerous. They're reconstituting their entire organization. They haven't organized in over 10 years. They have not been actively organized in over 10 years. You guys probably never heard of the Bashback movement before because conservatives never covered it back when it happened. I will be doing more on that this month. We've been reading Queer Ultraviolence and Counter-Revolutionary Book Club. Yes, I know I need to get that updated to the podcast, but you can find those streams on my YouTube channel. So the Bashback movement is, you can find an article about it on my website right now. It's right on the homepage. They haven't actively organized in about 10 years. And now they're back. They reconstituted at the Los Angeles Anarchist Book Fair a couple weeks ago. What does all this mean? I think we are going to see militant queer activism at pride events. I think we are going to see violence at pride events. I think if you are one of those people that's out there covering pride events because you want to own the libs or whatever, or you just think it'll be an interesting thing to cover, be very careful. And I mean this, especially if you're in a major lefty city like Los Angeles or Seattle or New York or any of these like big time lefty cities with big events. Be very careful and be very diligent about what you're seeing, because I promise you we just literally saw a guy in Colorado yesterday throw a Molotov cocktail, okay? What a horrible, horrific incident. Listen, I don't support Israel at all in any way, but I also don't support firebombing peaceful protesters. And I certainly don't support throwing of Molotov cocktails. Denounce all violence, all that stuff. Like, I think this should be obvious and clear. But I just want to emphasize, like, we are going to start seeing more militancy from the far left. Now, the two most recent incidences of militancy are this Molotov cocktail guy and the DC shooter. They both come out of the Free Palestine movement. The queer activist movement is deeply ingrained right now in the Free Palestine movement. I do not believe the bomber who threw a Molotov cocktail was queer. Absolutely not. He was an Islamist. Okay, come on. He just was. He has different reasons. He has different skin in the game in this particular incident, and he's going to spend a lot of time in jail. I do not believe the DC shooter was a queer Marxist. I believe he was a Free Palestine activist. However, we recently just saw last weekend in Seattle queer activists in Antifa, so-called. I think it was Bashback. I think it was more Bashback than it was Antifa, if I'm honest about it, but I don't have proof of that yet. yet. But we saw them going after a Christian concert. There have been militant clashes between queer activists and Christians in Seattle all last week. We are going to see them more violent at these events, I promise you. So keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for any signs that say bashback. Keep an eye out for any signs with an upside down pink triangle or a right side up pink triangle. Quite frankly, they use both, but mostly they use the upside down pink triangle. So that's one I usually reference. And we're going to be doing a lot of queer coverage this month, and I will show you more about this ideology than anyone else on the internet. It is something that I have spent a lot of time studying over the last couple of years. I would match my knowledge of this ideology against anyone on the internet, literally. I'm pretty sure I know more about this ideology than any so-called anti-communist or so-called anti-woke activist on the internet. And if people don't believe me, then give me a name. Give me a name of someone who knows more than me. Give me a name of someone who's covering it more than me. I really do mean that. But I'm pretty sure I know more than anyone else, which is actually a terrifying thought to me. People think I'm like patting myself on the back. It's actually a terrifying thought to me that I've just spent so much time studying this ideology because I find it fascinating that I might actually know more than anyone else. I wish people knew more. My goal with doing Queer Marxism Month is to get people to know more, to get people to pay more attention to this. I think that we're going to see a dramatic rise in militant queer activism this year. I think it's going to be terrifying. And so I'm going to do my best to show you guys what's going on. I'm going to do my best to teach you. If you appreciate the work I'm doing, head over to my Substack. That is Karlyn, Karlyn.substack.com. Sign up for a membership of $8 a month, $80 a year. I would love to bring in a ton of new members this summer. Guys, your membership, your support, it allows me to do investigations. It allows me to do undercover journalism. I cannot do it without your help and your funding. So if you are in a financial position to do so, I humbly ask that you sign up for $8 a month, $80 a year on the Substack. That is the very best way to support the work I'm doing. Of course, there are other ways like coming to streams, sending super chats, buying my books, buying my merch, stuff like that. All of that does go to support the work I'm doing, and I really do appreciate it. But the Substack is number one. Final reminder, actually two reminders. Number one, for people already supporting my work on the Substack, we are not doing a supporter call tonight because we're going to be doing a spy stream. Okay, so there will be a spy stream tonight. I will be sending out information on the Substack. You guys are going to love it. Number two, there will also be a movie in my supporter Discord tonight. So if you're not in my supporter Discord, get in my supporter Discord. You can look in the chat on Substack. I literally just sent out a link yesterday. You can look in the member area on locals. I sent out a link there too, I think. If you can't find the link to the supporter Discord and you're a supporter on one of those platforms, please just ping me and I'll make sure you get in. We are watching The Passion of the Christ tonight at 9 p.m. in the supporter Discord. I'm really excited about it. It's a great movie if you've never seen it. We do movie nights on Sunday and Monday nights in my supporter Discord. That is just one of the perks you get for being a member of my community. And it's just a great way to chill out. We do trivia, we do music related to the movies, and Passion of the Christ is just a great movie. So I'm really looking forward to Mac being in my community, showing that tonight at 9 p.m. I will be in attendance. I hope you guys are too. But we will be doing Spy Stream right before that. So I'll be sending out information. Spy Stream is the supporter exclusive. And I hope to see you guys there. It's going to be a good spy stream tonight, I think. So that's what's going on. Welcome to Queer Marxism Month. Buy my new book, Alice in Queerland. Support my work. Come to movie night. Do all this stuff. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.